Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today is Rob Morse of Self-Defense Gun Stories and of the Slow Facts blog. Charlie Cook, this is his day, but I think he's teaching classes in Utah or something. Anyway, he couldn't make it tonight. Rob said he'd step in. Rob, thanks for joining us today, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Getting started, I started doing a news search this morning, and before we do that, let me say if you're watching live on the Polite Society podcast feeds, either their Polite Society podcast Facebook page or the YouTube stream, you can comment on those live videos and get your comments on the air, and Rob and I will discuss them. If you're watching us anywhere else on Facebook, or if you're catching us on OpsLens or on Getter or anywhere else, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. That'll get to us just as fast. It's just I don't have a way to pick up. I can only pick up one Facebook page and comments, so I put it on Polite Society. So anyway, if you want to comment, just go ahead and comment. And we'll get your comments up. We'll discuss them on the air as soon as I get everything hooked up, and it is. So, first story today, Rob. Out in Staten Island, New York, they had what I've been calling a compensated confiscation event. They had a gun buyback, which technically they can't do because they never owned them in the first place. They had 72 firearms turned in during this compensated confiscation. Going to the story here, looks like they had they had to break 49 handguns, 3 shotguns, and 1 AR style. They call it assault weapon, but we know better. Were turned in, and these no questions asked gun buybacks have really got my goat. This is the epitome of the firearm is the criminal. Look, if the bad guy just turns in his guns, he'll become a good guy. He won't commit any more crimes. That has to be what's going on here, because just taking the gun and destroying the gun without getting evidence from a gun if it was used in a crime, not bothering to find out if it was used in a crime. And by the way, if I'm suspecting a lot of these guns were stolen without getting it back to its original owner. This is the epitome of if the guns go away, the problem will go away, and it's backwards think. Rob, what do you think, man?
I think you're spot on. 85% of violent crimes were committed without the criminal using a firearm. So if we got rid of all the guns, we've still got the vast majority of crime that's still going on. Because believe me, if you take the 15% of criminals who happen to be using a gun, they don't become Boy Scouts. They become muggers with bats.
Wow.
And what I worry about is if this is a get-out-of-jail-free card this is where you dispose of your evidence without the risk. What bothers me, somebody stole my gun, they dump it in a turn-in event, and I don't get it back. Wow. That seems a lot like breaking the law to me.
It does. It's fencing is all it is. Because
thank you.
The people that turn guns in get $200 worth of gift cards or bank cards or something. And so they're getting something of value. The police department is getting something of value, possibly stolen, possibly used in a crime. This is fencing is all it is. Right. I want you to comment up here. George is right on the ball. He says SDPD. I think that's San Diego PD. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
San Diego, because George is a San Diego guy. Equipment room was burglarized overnight. No word on how many patrol rifles are now assault rifles.
Good question, George. On the money. Thank you. I believe that also, what was the other euphemism? It's a personal defense weapon.
Yeah.
If you're wearing a uniform.
If you're wearing a uniform. Otherwise, you're an anti-government insurrectionist, is what you are.
Yes, right.
If you're not wearing a badge. Robert,
you want to jump onto Seattle, or do we have more?
I got one more comment I want to get in, and this is a plug for you, Rob. Robert over on the YouTube site says, Rob, I finally got caught up on all the self-defense fun stories. And he corrected it. He says guns, so yeah, self-defense gun stories. He's all caught up.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. That's my wife says good. Now I have 2 listeners.
There you go. I want to, and this one kind of ties. It's the same kind of thinking. This kind of ties in. One of my colleagues over at the Second Amendment Foundation, and my brain is not working right now. Geez, why can't I? Let me go ahead and pull this up, because I want to give. In my brain, Dave Workman wrote this.
It's not Dave Workman. All right.
Yeah, it is Dave Workman. There was a shooting last week in a school in Seattle. There were 2. Let's see here. There were. I don't see in the story how many. It was a small. It was I think 2 people were killed. Well, 1 student dead, and 2 teens ages 14 and 15 are in jail from that incident. And all of a sudden, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is calling for the drop in Washington of preemption laws. Right now in Washington State, and for the past 37 years, you've only been able to have gun control laws that are as strong as Washington state law. You cannot go beyond state law if you are leading a city in Washington state. Well, now the mayor wants that dropped. And I relate this to the first story I picked out. If we just get rid of the guns, the crime will go away. This is a pipe dream on Mayor Harrell's part. The crime is not going to go away until, Mayor Harrell, you put the criminals away. The criminals are not going to be put away until you appoint prosecutors that do that.
The Seattle mayor is in a bind. He's governing a visible disaster. They have special police details to escort city employees to mass transit, and some of them said, no, even that's just too dangerous. Other businesses downtown, they're going, you remember this work at home? We'd like you to come back, except we think where you now work is too dangerous for you to visit. You could say, if there were only a law against murder, but as you point out, you need people that will prosecute. Oh, wait. So the mayor needs an excuse that the local media will swallow. It doesn't need to work. Let's see. We could make double secret gun laws that, see, we're doing something, so it's someone else's fault.
Yes, absolutely. And let's be clear. I wonderfully live in South Dakota. We're not changing our gun laws for you, Seattle. And I don't care if you blame it on us. There is no iron pipeline of guns going from South Dakota to Seattle. There is no iron pipelines of guns going from Boise, Idaho, which is almost as gun-free, but closer.
Well, wait a minute. When you have a drug and prostitution and illegal immigrant trade that is as big as the one servicing Seattle, that is an iron pipeline. They get billions of dollars of drugs across the border and up there. Believe me, they can get all the plastic, steel, lead, and brass that they want.
Oh, yeah. Well, remember, this has been a couple years ago. There was a California legislator. I cannot remember his name, but he was one of the major people in the California legislature that was pushing for gun control.
Yes.
He got arrested for trafficking firearms, including, I want to say it was, he was bringing grenade launchers in and giving them to gangs.
And RPGs off to the FBI, who said they were some Filipino rebels, I think. Yeah.
Yee, is that right? Leland Yee, is my brain working?
There you go. Hey, whoever said your memory was bad, if you used Google, you cheated. But it points to you anyway. Yes, Leland Yee. He's out of jail now. He was talking about running again.
Oh,
for office,
Lord.
Just to show you how screwed up. Hey, after this election, I'd believe anything.
And after this election, as long as the count goes long enough, he might win.
He'll win. Oh, yeah, as long as we've got a week, they can find the votes.
Yeah.
Gun control. Did you have some comments, or should we go to
No,
Chicago?
let's talk about Chicago.
Gun control Chicago had 21 people shot and wounded this last weekend. More sad news is that an additional 6 people were shot and killed. The total is now over 3,200 people shot this year by the drug gangs who control Chicago. As horrible as it sounds, this weekend was better than last weekend. Last weekend was 50% worse. We had 30 people wounded then. Now, since last week, Baltimore only had 1 person shot to death. That was the only recorded homicide of any kind during the week. So crime was way down in Baltimore. Thank you for the cold weather. That brings the total there up to 257 people shot and killed in Baltimore this year. Why would I bring up those 2 examples? So tremendously different, orders of magnitude different. Well, because both Chicago, Illinois and Baltimore, Maryland are noted for their extremely strict gun control laws. Paul pointed it out. Politicians say the violence in those failing cities, it's not really their fault. The politicians blame the guns that come from other places where there isn't crime. And then the gangs bring drugs to Chicago and Baltimore, where for some reason, the gangs are suddenly using those guns in violent crime, even though the honest citizens in those cities are disarmed. In the last few weeks, we've seen some honest citizens defend themselves with firearms in Chicago. I'm sorry, last few years. I want to see more of that, but it is a start. And now I notice we're starting to see armed defense in gun-controlled Maryland as well. Paul, you have the next story that talks about it.
Yeah, and this one...
we covered it on PSP, didn't we?
I do not remember. I think this is more recent than that one, but it was just afternoon when a driver came out of a Walmart with his groceries. He was about to put his groceries in his car when he noticed 2 men walking up to him. The 2 had guns in their hands, and they told the driver to hand over his keys to his car and his phone. Now, what the attackers didn't expect is the victim owned a gun too. Some counties are now issuing permits, and this particular defender had his Maryland concealed carry permit, and he was carrying that day. And the defender presented his firearm, and the 2 robbers ran. They shot at the defender as they ran. The defender did not shoot back. You don't shoot at a fleeing criminal. Don't shoot unless you absolutely positively have to. Anyway, defender stayed at the scene, put his gun away, and called 911. Police matched the robber's description with several similar carjackings in the last few days. And again, the defender was, and this is a surprising one to me, because they may have been forced to start issuing permits, but Maryland's still not pro-gun. The defender was not charged with any crimes. So, yeah.
And what you and I wonder was this defender someone who had his permit for a while? He's somebody who's connected, and that's why he wasn't charged? Or was he a recent permittee from out of town, or maybe even in Hanover, Maryland? I'm not sure if they're issuing it.
I don't know either. My initial thought is that this whispers training in my ear, because you not shooting back when they're running, even though that they're shooting at you, that takes discipline.
See, or when he drew his firearm and they ran, they started to turn, did he say, this is an opportunity, and he ducked behind the fender of the car? I don't know. They're just, as you say, there are a lot of moving parts, and one of them, if I were there, would have been me.
Yes. Very, very much so. Let me get this comment in from Robert over on the YouTube side here quick, going back to our previous story. He says, Democrats are always doing what they claim others are doing and always double down on bad ideas. Yeah, Robert.
Robert, right. It seems to work until somebody pulls him up short.
Absolutely. Rob, let's go with you on this next story, and I've got a comment on it as soon as you're done.
Okay. Every governor who signed constitutional carry was reelected. Look, this is not the election a lot of us wanted, but there were some good points. Every single governor who signed a constitutional carry law, which would allow people to carry a firearm without a state permit, won re-election. Let me list them for you. Brian Kemp won Georgia. Chris Sununu won New Hampshire by 20 points plus. Kim Reynolds won Iowa. Kevin Stitt won Oklahoma. Greg Abbott won Texas. And I don't even have to like all of them, but Ohio Governor Mike DeWine also won re-election. Do you have a comment there, Paul?
Yeah, the original story they were missing in the original story, they were missing one governor in that list. And that's Kristi Noem of South Dakota. 4 years ago, the very first bill she signed was constitutional carry. And she more than easily won re-election last week. She got double the votes of the Democrat running against her.
Wow.
And where that's significant is this: she's been pushing freedom in our state, and that's what she ran on, was a freedom ticket. And she's been pushing freedom, not just personal freedom, but all types of freedom throughout the state. And she won her first election, I want to say, by 6 points when she first ran for governor. This time she won by, I want to say it was 66 to 31. And there was a libertarian in there too that got a couple percent. So
you know what that tells me, Paul? Okay, she's good. She's converting people to her side. There are not that many Republicans. Independents are going, I like what she says. I'm on her side. Yeah, good job. Additionally, I want to throw in, I visit Florida, but I don't live there. Governor Ron DeSantis, he did not sign a constitutional carry bill, but he called for the legislature to put one on his desk. If guns were on the ballot in Florida, then the people of Florida rewarded him for his program stance by giving him another term.
Yeah, and I got to say, and the speculation has been rife ever since he won re-election that he's only going to serve 2 years, that he's running for the big seat in Washington, D.C. Is he? I don't know. And we're going to have to wait for, 2 weeks? Actually, I thought that it was supposed to be today.
Supposed to be today.
Was Trump's announcement.
You know what's true? I voted for a local judge who didn't go negative. He didn't demean other candidates. He presented his qualifications for the office. He described what he did well. If some of the candidates have to take pot shots at other people rather than say what they did well, they're going to lose my vote. We'll see if they pick that up before the next election.
I'm hoping there are a lot more voters like you that will vote for a positive candidate. We'll have to see. It's not. I'm being a little bit negative here, but look, negative campaigning works.
sometimes.
So, especially if you're running behind. And, I hope more candidates are
the issue with it. The issue with negative campaigning, Paul, is it's a big world, and pretty soon you're standing alone. I don't know that I have enough friends that I can afford to start throwing them away.
I certainly don't.
What was the comment about magazine capacity? If you're carrying a standard capacity magazine and you run out of ammo, you don't need more guns. You need more friends.
I like that. Armed friends.
Armed friends with guns. Do we want to go to New York, or do we have some comments?
And you did something here earlier today that I got to give you kudos for. We talked about this story on the Saturday weekend bulletin.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there were questions, and you got them answered.
Well, okay. So, do you want me to cover all the story or just condense it down? What are you thinking?
Your call, man. I'm going to put you on screen, and you tell everybody what they need to know.
Okay, we got 9 minutes. Judge Glenn Sotheby is the federal judge for the Northern District of New York. He gutted most of New York's recently passed Concealed Carry Improvement Act. Large parts of the law, see, it hasn't been tried, so he can't declare them unconstitutional. He can say they're enjoined until the case is heard, so the state can't use that law. So here's the shakedown. In any location providing behavioral health or chemical dependency care services, that could be a dry out clinic, that could be a Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. The state said you can't carry there. The judge said that's crazy. Yes, you can. Technically, what he said is the plaintiffs are so likely to succeed on the merits of the case, given current law, that I'm putting that law in, enjoining that law. Any places of worship or religious observation, public parks and zoos we can now carry. Aviation, transportation, airports and buses. Okay, we can't go, except we're prohibited by law in the airports. The issue being, did the way the New York law was so poorly written, was it against the law if I even dropped somebody off at the terminal? If I had a gun in my car when I flew and it wanted to have it there when I came back so I wasn't disarmed? In any establishment that was serving alcohol for consumption. New York had made gun-free zones out of theaters, conference centers, banquet halls, and any gathering of individuals to collectively express their constitutional right to protest or assemble. Talk about drawing a target on the First Amendment. And what New York had outlawed, all private property without express signage that said guns are welcome. Judge said that's crazy. I assume we can carry in our cars now. The issue of subways didn't come up because this was the northern part of New York. There weren't subways there, so the plaintiffs didn't have standing about subways. He got rid of the application part that said you have to demonstrate good moral character. He said, that's ridiculous. That's justifiable need by another name. We no longer have to turn over lists of our family, friends, and cohabitants where we live. We don't have to turn over our social media accounts. What the judge closed was a fishing expedition where we had to, in quotes here, provide other information required by the licensing officer. Yeah, no more fishing.
Good.
It wasn't perfect. The judge said, yeah, that face-to-face interview, that might be constitutional, so I'm going to let it stand. He let stand some sensitive places, schools, public playgrounds, nursery schools, and preschools. What isn't clear if that includes the parking lots and the sidewalks or only applies inside the buildings. I didn't know if the judge's rulings applied to all New York State, good arguments there, that was Michael Piwowarski's opinion, or only in his district. That was my opinion. So I called a lawyer who's successfully sued New York lots of times. And she said we're both wrong. Judge Sotheby's recent decision is binding on the 31 counties in the Northern District in New York. It is persuasive in other counties in New York. New York State hasn't filed an appeal to Judge Sotheby's decision, and maybe for good reason. New York State has 30 days to do so. They still have time if they wanted to, but they've been losing cases all over, and those decisions indicate the momentum of how judges are viewing their laws. There are two other decisions on similar Second Amendment issues in Western District of New York and the Southern District of New York. If they appeal this decision and lose, then those decisions become binding, not only in all of New York State, but also in Connecticut.
And New Jersey.
Because
I don't because the appeal court is the appeals court for the Second Circuit, and so that would be Connecticut, New Jersey, New York.
So they may choose to do what Washington, D.C. did in the Heller decision. They would rather perhaps lose small than lose big.
Yeah. Well, and D.C. is that special case where D.C. has its own circuit, so there's only one place to go from there, and that's the Supreme Court. And where they did lose when we were talking Heller and other decisions. On this, I want to bring up the attorney you called is a fairly well-known attorney, Paloma Campana, who has sued very successfully New York and other jurisdictions. So yeah, you went to a very, very credible source for this.
Right now, she's busy suing New York State for the aspects of the concealed carry of their Second Amendment laws that infringe on gun owners. Gun sellers. She says, look, depending on the crazy interpretations of this law, every gun store might be in violation of the new laws come December 5th. Holy cow, we need an injunction right now.
Mm-hmm. We get a couple comments in here real quick, both of them from gun websites. Pete says, you've addressed the wins, going back to the election, you've addressed the wins and losses, but spreads are an aspect too. Second Amendment only lost closely, not in sweeping numbers against guns. This is an indication we are winning.
Okay, good point.
And he says, we won't win each fight, but almost winning / barely losing can be an accomplishment too in some cases. I'm thinking of, and we're going to be getting to a story about Oregon's 114. If it loses, if it's defeated, it's going to be a squeaker.
Oh, yeah. Well, now what's fascinating, sheriffs have already come out and said, it looks like it's going to win. I'm not enforcing the mag ban here. Just no, not happening.
Yeah. Fortunately,
they're also going, by the way, you think I'm qualified to train tens of thousands of concealed carry applicants in my county every year? Oh, wow.
Well, and I know a little bit about training because I've been through a lot of it, but I want to say something here. Police training and civilian training are absolutely different things, just the same as military training and civilian training are entirely different things. Military is team tactics and rifles to take a goal and keep that goal. Police training is largely team tactics, sometimes solo tactics, to stop an individual. Civilian training is to save your own darn life. Three different tactics, three different methods of training, if you ask me.
Well, Paul, the policeman's job is to close with and apprehend a suspect. You and I want the opposite of that. I want to keep him from advancing so I can back out of the problem. My goal is to survive. I don't have to arrest anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we do the Polite Society podcast here in about 30 minutes, every time we do that Polite Society podcast, it seems like almost every time I say, we are not the police. We do not have the same job. We do not have the same goals. And so to require us to go through a police agency for training, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to try to adapt police training for civilians.
From your calendar, PSP Rob Pincus WTTA.
Alexa, stop. Or they're going to look down on the civilians so much that you don't get much training at all. Maybe safety training.
They're also opening themselves up perhaps to liability because in a court of law, but Judge, that's how I was trained.
Yeah. I want to let's see here. I got to wait for this to populate into my broadcast software, but just got a great comment in. Here we go. Country, rock and roll, and classical music all use a guitar, but each play it in a different way.
There you go.
Yeah, and then you throw the blues in there. And, yeah. So, anyway, Rob, we are overtime. Big shock. We didn't get through all of the news. But on our way out the door, man, would you please plug Self-Defense Gun Stories and your blog and anything else you want to talk about?
Right. I host the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. They come out once a week. We look at how our neighbors defended themselves. I'm often a co-host with Paul on the Polite Society podcast. Paul runs 90 minutes. I try and get Self-Defense Gun Stories done in 20. My blog is at slowfacts.wordpress.com. Much of my writing is picked up at Amaland Shooting Sports News. What's unique about Amaland, there I'm writing a armed citizens column where we're talking about armed citizens who often stopped mass murder. Paul.
I got to get this in because this is just funny. I figured Paul was having robots do all his work for him. Now we just heard the evidence.
Touché. Thank you.
That's a reminder in case I'm not in the room. I have one that goes off 30 minutes before the bullet, and it sounds all throughout the house in case I'm not directly in the studio. It's a reminder for me to get my backside in the studio and make sure everything's ready to fly.
Pay attention to details.
Yes. Paul,
it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thank you for stepping in on short notice. Everybody do come join us in 27 and a half minutes. Same bat time, same bat channel for Polite Society Podcast. Rob Pincus is our guest tonight. We'll be talking about Walk the Talk America. Thank you again for watching. Thanks for commenting. And